about creating a life care plan. And we'll just scroll through the important. I've got to give you my disclosures. I've got to let you know that I am not a tax preparer or an attorney, so I cannot give you tax and legal advice. I also am have a securities license, and Emily's firm is not affiliated with MML Investor Services.
Wasn't so bad.
Today, we're going to talk about what a life care plan is, a little bit about the timeline, a few misconceptions, all the steps that go into creating a life care plan, a little bit more detail about a letter of intent, and then how to get started. So what is a life care plan? A life care plan is a plan that is focused on your loved one, and I tend to call them kiddos here, no matter how old they are. It's focused on your child with special needs. And we take a holistic approach. So that means we're looking at, with Emily's help, the legal side, the financial side, what do you want to call it? The taking care of, where they're going to live, all of those things all together. And why does your child with special needs need one? Because a couple of reasons. If your child is receiving government benefits, and primarily if your child is 18 and over 18 and receiving government benefits, then they have resource limits, which is right now $2,000 to their name. And should you pass away and you have more than $2,000 and your child inherits more than $2,000, it's going to throw them off their benefits. So that is one reason why we create a life care plan, is to protect government benefits. The second reason is so that you can leave assets to your child and they can't be taken advantage of, because everything is done through trusts and following rules, and you generate those rules besides the government generating rules. So we want to protect your child going forward in the future.
Is it fair to say that a life care plan also helps us share all of those things that only a parent or grandparent or guardian might know about somebody, just even like the personal medical background and things like that? Is that part of a life care plan?
Definitely. We want to know all the details about the kiddo, all the wishes and desires of the parent or guardian, what they want for their child when they're no longer here. It incorporates all of that.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. And the process, as you are aware, is not an easy process. It's not an easy thing to think about, you not being here to take care of your child. But it's an important one. It's definitely an important one. So we'll go through some of the stuff in more detail as we go through the presentation. But the column on the left are things that we look at if your child is before the age of 18. Making sure you're on the government benefits that your child qualifies for at that time, whether they be, in our state, all tax access, Social Security, getting your IEPs done in school, getting your evaluations done, all that stuff before the age of 18. After the age of 18, a lot of things that your child may have had as far as benefits goes you have to do a redetermination. And so we're looking at Social Security again. And then at age 18, we're also making that very personal decision on guardianship and different alternatives to guardianship, depending on what the capabilities and decision-making abilities of your child are. And we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of this stuff as we roll through. So many, and Emily gets this too, people say to us all the time, why do I need a trust? Why do I need a special needs trust? It's too expensive. Well, it's not inexpensive, but it's important because, like I said in the beginning, if your child receives more than $2,000 to their name, then they're thrown off their government benefits. Those government benefits over time are worth quite a bit of money. Excuse me. Currently, SSI is $914 a month. Times 12 times many years that your child is alive, that's a lot of money that, you know, we don't have to plan for. I always like the one where they said somebody else will help financially. Who will that be? You know, and can I, you know, meet them so they can take care of me financially too? You know, are you going to win the lotto? Same thing, trust accounts are only for the wealthy. You know, again, if your child's going to inherit anything more than $2,000, it's important to put a plan in place. And the most important bullet on the slide is the siblings will provide care. So Emily and I have both heard horror stories about this one where parents, you talk to parents and they say, well, we're just going to leave all of our money to our daughter who does not have special needs. She's going to take care of our son. So here's the problems that could occur with that. You know, maybe your daughter's a great person, but she marries somebody that turns out to be a creep and they get a divorce. There goes half the assets. What if your daughter gets in a car accident, gets sued? There goes all the assets. What if your daughter becomes fiscally irresponsible and has to file bankruptcy? There goes the assets. And what if your daughter just says, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, and she takes the money and run? So putting a plan in place.
Or the human one, and she passes away.
Oh yeah, you know,
according to her estate plan.
I've never added that one. That's true. That's true. If she passes
It'll happen
away,
to the best of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she passes away first, then what? I need to add that to my list.
Well, I know it's often we tend to think about how can we informally do some of this planning. And part of that is a big part of the process is making sure we've got not only the formal structure through financial planning and estate planning, but also a lot of the informal pieces are very important. However, you kind of have to pick and choose which elements are formal versus informal. And I'm afraid that relying on other human beings without the structure of the formal plan leads often to unintended consequences. So to all your points, humans are humans, and whether it's a child of yours or a cousin, we are all valuable. and
life happens.
Unintentionally, things can happen. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So when we go to create a life care plan, these are the primary steps that we go through to create a plan. So the first one is address primary issues. You know, what are your hot buttons right now? What do we need to address right now at the moment?
Can I stop and ask you a question, Karen?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I'm just curious, you know, you've got your financial advisor hat on when you're starting this process with clients. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so how does it fit into your overall financial advising? Are you doing the same consistent or concurrently? Are we looking at not only their financial plan, but also the life care plan? Or I just want to make sure I'm understanding the timing of this. Does this come in after you kind of nail down your traditional financial plan, then you start talking about life care planning, or how does that all fit together?
It actually goes together at the same time. Okay. So we go through, if the parent or guardian's household isn't in financial order, then we cannot plan for the child. So we start with the parent, but it is concurrent. It all happens at the same time. We gather the information from the parent, whether that be financial information, legal information, protection information, and then we also gather up their wishes and desires for their child. And depending on how old their child is, kind of figure out that game plan.
Thank you. I just wanted to
no problem. This is good.
In my mind, I just wanted to make sure it's all happening.
So we address the primary issues, and then we're going to create a vision. So that vision is, you know, you may have more than one child. So for your other two children, you know, do we have college plans? You know, what are we planning for? Are there weddings coming up? Are you retiring soon? And then all the vision for your child with special needs. Capture all those things, create goals. What are we striving to achieve? And then we review guardianship depending on the age of your child. So if your child is under the age of 18, it's just like any typical child, we want to make sure that if something happens to the parents or guardians, that there's a plan in place to take care of their kiddos. If your child is over the age of 18, then you have decisions to make, what's right for your family, again, based on the ability and capabilities of your child. We go through and we identify, financial resources, what's available today, where's the money going to come from. And then we determine, how much money will it cost to address the primary issues in your life care plan costs. For the letter of intent, we'll cover that in more detail in another slide. So I'm going to glaze over that right now. And preparing your legal instruments, you're going to work with somebody like Emily to ensure that your wishes and desires are carried out for your child. Have a discussion with her to figure out what exact documents are needed to protect your family and to protect your child with special needs. And then between your attorney and your financial planner, you'll determine, is a special needs trust needed and or an ABLE account. And we'll talk a little bit about those things too as we go forward. We want to hold a family meeting to make sure everyone, whether it's friends or family, knows what's going on. And then we want to review things annually because life changes. So here's that letter of intent. So it says right at the top, it's not a legal document, but it's very, very important. It can be considered in court because it contains the wishes and desires of the parent or the guardian. It leaves very specific details and instructions. So if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, somebody can pick up this document and have a place to start. So as a parent or guardian, think of all the things that you know about your child, all the things that happen in a day or in a week, whether it's their allergies, whether it's their triggers, whether it's their food, whether it's what they like to do, any of those things we want to incorporate in a letter of intent. Both Emily and I have.
Is there a specific audience we're writing it for?
You're writing it for, if you're not here, somebody has a starting place to take care of your child. I've had people even, we have a template that's a Word document. I've even had people include videos. So if there's very specific things about their child they want to include or pictures, they can do that.
I tend to think of them because I'm on the legal side of things that oftentimes the letter of intent for me is encouraged so that the trustee, the person managing the resources for the person and the guardian. But when I ask that question, I imagine there's a list a mile long of who might need to pick it up and see it. So I think some of that could be helpful too as you're writing it, to think of all the different people who might need to read it.
It's a good point. It's a good point because you're right. The guardian could be different than the trustee. So that's a very good point to keep those things in mind. So how do we get started? So as Emily asked a few slides ago.
So you're jumping ahead, sorry.
Yeah, she gets a little antsy. That's okay. But we want to address your financial planning as a parent guardian first. And when I say first, it is concurrent, but we start off with talking about your cash flow, your assets, your current protection. So we know where we're starting from. We also want you to retire too. So this is kind of retirement planning times 2, because your child can live 20 to 30 years past you. So we have to start off with a good foundation to be able to take it out that long. So, what do we want to plan for? residential needs. This is probably the hardest bullet that we attack as we're going through the plan, is where will your child live if you're not here? It really depends on the age of your child. It depends on their abilities, their wishes, desires, private pay, supplemented through government benefits, all of those things. But what I suggest and encourage to parents is start looking before it's needed, so that you have some ideas of what will fit for your client, that's me, what will fit for your child, what you think will work and what won't work. We're going to look at education, again, depending on the age of your child, but keep in mind that here in Arizona, your child can stay in school until age 22. So we want them to stay in school as long as they're getting something out of it, as long as they're still learning job skills and life skills and, more educational stuff. It's important for them to take that. If they, get out of school earlier, that's fine. But we just want to make sure there's a plan for what's next, because it doesn't matter if your kid's typical or special needs. If they don't have a plan when they get out of school, the plan is going to be sitting on the couch. So we want to have a plan in place, rolling into, employment. Is it going to be employment or a day program or further job training program? Whatever it may be, we want to have it planned, next steps. Always want to make sure we include social and recreational, because we want your child to have a well-rounded life. And will there be ongoing medical care? Many times our kiddos have more than one diagnosis, so we want to make sure we capture that if there's ongoing medical care, if we need to be aware. Keep in mind, as we're developing this plan, it's got a lot of moving parts and it's going to change. So we never make a plan that stays static and is unchangeable, because laws change, rules change, your child changes, and we want to make sure that we have a plan that can flow with the changes as much as possible.
Karen, can I ask, when you're talking to clients and we're trying to look into our crystal balls and figure all these things out, how do you factor in government benefits, things like Social Security and Medicaid? Are there calculators for things like that, or how does that kind of fit into all of this?
So for Social Security, we take into account, what is currently available, the $914 a month. We also take into account that how that changes as the parent takes retirement benefits. So as a parent, when you take retirement benefits, your child will get a raise to be 50% of your Social Security benefit. Now, don't panic. It doesn't take away from your pocket. It's just how they calculate it. So if you were getting $3,000 a month, or you're scheduled to get $3,000 a month for your Social Security, your kiddo would get a raise from $914 to $1,500 a month. Then when you pass away, your kiddo will get another raise from 50% to 75% of your Social Security. So we take that all into account when we're doing the planning. We also take into account if they're receiving their current access benefits. And then again, when that parent starts taking retirement, 2 years after that, your child's going to start receiving Medicare, no matter what age they are. So we take into account that, additional medical benefits will be covered that we don't have to plan for.
Sounds tricky.
Yes, we juggle a lot of balls at one time. So we go through this process and we identify the financial resources that are available now and will be available in the future. So we're looking at, what does the family have now? What are their plans for them, the parents, guardians themselves, any other children involved? We also do a deep dive into employer benefits. We want to make sure that the parents are getting the most bang for their buck out of their employer benefits. What I mean by that is they may be paying for something that is more expensive than they realize. They may be not taking advantage of something that they should be. So we wanted to look into all that. You know, if they have disability insurance, will it be enough if they're too sick or too injured to work? Do we need to add supplemental disability insurance? You know, how is the retirement plan working? Are they contributing enough? Are they at least contributing enough for the match? So we go through all of that. As we kind of covered on, you know, we look at the government benefits. Are you and your child receiving everything that you're eligible for? So we want to make sure we review all that. And then we do legal planning. We do a review there. So if they haven't started working with Emily or someone like Emily at this point, we do a review of their documents. So we'll do a review and see what's in place currently. If they have stuff in place, we'll do a review, provide observations, and then encourage them to make an appointment with Emily or one of her counterparts so that we get updates and changes made if they're needed. So guardianships and alternatives. So guardianship's a very personal decision for the family. Parents, so let's back up a step. When your child turns 18, doesn't matter what your child's abilities are, the government considers them an adult. So if you don't think your child is able to make the decisions that they need to be able to make as an adult, then you might want to consider guardianship. We have carve-outs here in the state of Arizona so that if you think your child is capable to drive or vote, you can get those carved out into the guardianship. We have currently brand spanking new, supportive decision-making in the state of Arizona. And it is so new that we're learning as we speak right now on how it's going to work. But in a nutshell, it's creating a team for your child with legal documents so that your child has help making or guidance making the decisions that they need to make going forward. And all the other, you know, powers of attorneys, you can do powers of attorney for your child, help your child do powers of attorney. The only difference with that is they're easily changeable. You know, somebody could encourage your child just to go to a bank and sign new powers of attorney. So you got to be careful. And it is a hard decision. It's a very personal family decision, but both Emily and I can help with this. Special needs trust. Sorry, I wanted to check, see what the slide was. So back to the beginning, when we started talking about your child can't inherit more than $2,000 or they're going to be thrown off their government benefits. In order to protect them, Emily will help you, not help you, Emily will draft for you a special needs trust so that the money can be held and your child's government benefits will be protected. So sometimes we get people that'll come to us and say, well, I heard there's a Medicaid payback. I don't want to put money in a special needs trust. And then if there's money left over when my child dies, it'll go to the state. Well, there are different types of special needs trust. If you're doing pre-planning and you are leaving money to your child with special needs, we will do a third-party special needs trust. And there is not a Medicaid payback. The beneficiary is the person or charity that you name when your child with special needs passes away. If your child receives money from a settlement case, like there was an accident, so it was their money, or if your child receives an inheritance, I'll say accidentally, because grandma leaves money that you didn't know was coming and it goes straight to your child instead of to your child's special needs trust, then that money will go into a first party special needs trust. And yes, there's a Medicaid payback when your child passes away. Anything you want to add, Ms. Attorney? I know this is a whole 2-hour presentation on its own, so.
At least, yeah, I can talk about this for days, but yeah, I think the important thing to know is that you need to know and you need to be working with a professional who understands the difference. So whether it's financial or legal, there are very specific rules as it relates to special needs trusts and how they get structured and funded. And so it's not something that you want to guess at either, because there's a big difference. And that it just breaks my heart anytime I see somebody come in with a plan that they had paid somebody to do that is done incorrectly. So third-party trusts are awesome tools, and we have a lot of flexibility in how we set them up and administer them and all sorts of things. So they're a wonderful thing. And first-party special needs trusts, yes, they do have some downsides, but they're still a great tool to accomplish what we need. But so for the right person to make their best decision, they just need to understand what options they have. And with first party trust, we frankly just often don't have an option. So it's still, they can be frustrating, but they still are going to preserve benefits. So it's a balancing act.
Exactly.
It's just a lot of pros and cons to everything, but you just want to make sure you're working with somebody who understands the difference and can advise you or at least teach you so that you can make the best decisions for your family.
So able accounts. Able accounts are, well, back up a step. I've been preaching or explaining through this whole presentation that your child can only have $2,000 to their name or they're going to get thrown off their benefits. And the only way to do that is through a special needs trust. And oh, look, surprise, there's a different way to do it. Able accounts are an additional way to save assets for your child so that their government benefits are protected. Able accounts were created in 2014. They allow child or guardian to open an account. They grow tax-free, come out distributed tax-free if they're used for the benefit of the child. There's a huge all-inclusive list of things that you could purchase for your child using these assets. It's a great tool. We like to it's not the end-all. So you don't want to say, let's eliminate the special needs trust because there's some rules around this. You can only put in $17,000 a year into this account. You can also only have $100,000 or your child's benefits will be suspended, not kicked off. They will be suspended until the dollar amount comes below 100,000. So, you know, this is not a tool to save a lifetime of savings. What we like to use it for is for a working account. So that a really good example, 2 really good examples is if your child keeps receiving money as gifts from family and friends for birthdays and Christmas, and that takes their account over $2,000, this is a great place to save it. The other really good way to use this is if your child is working, and so they're getting their $914 a month, they may be paying you for lodging, so they still have like $600 left over every month, but then they're working, and then maybe after a month or 2, they would have more than $2,000 in their savings account. Well, we used to call that the stupid spend down rule, because if your child worked and ended up with $2,010, they would be kicked off their benefits, and you'd have to, spend the money on things your child really didn't need. Now you can take that overage amount and put it into the ABLE account. So it's a great way to not have to spend on things that you don't need. It's also a great way to save for things like dental, because dental insurance, even for us who are typical, isn't all that great, and you're always paying a lot out of pocket. And our kiddos with special needs tend not to have great oral hygiene. So, ABLE accounts are a great, useful tool, but they're not the end all for your planning. So Emily touched on this a few minutes ago. It's important to find professionals that know your community, whether it's a financial planner or an attorney, because the rules, as parents and guardians, you guys know, there's a lot of rules and regulations out there. And if you start working with a professional that doesn't know these rules and regulations, a lot of things can get screwed up. So when you're creating your team, make sure that they know the special needs community and know the rules and regulations around this community. And I am done.
Whoa, so fast.
I know, you didn't ask me enough questions.
Okay, well, good. I have some more. I would encourage folks joining us today to add a few more to our chat and or question answer. And if you want to stop sharing, I mean, we can keep your information, but I'll also be sharing that on the final slide, but get a little better sense. I guess talk to me a little bit. I have a lot of clients who come in concerned. They're in their child rearing ages. They've got careers, but you know how expensive it is to have kids and all sorts of things, and they're caregiving and juggling all these different pieces. And so they're concerned they don't have enough money to work with a financial advisor. They're concerned because they have, maybe a small life insurance policy through their employer or something like that. Tell me about your process, what you would talk to somebody in that situation about, and what you might be able to do, helping them on the financial piece so that they can build this life care plan.
So no matter how much a person makes or what they have, we start off with, what's your end game? What do you, if you could afford, the Cadillac, what would you want? You want to make sure that if the primary income earner isn't here, there's enough money, or the primary caregiver isn't here, there's enough money to take care of the kids. You want to pay for college for 2 other kids, you want to retire at such and such an age. So we create a path. We know where we want to get. And then we figure out where they are. And that's our, the beginning of our path. And then at that time, we determine, okay, what's the first most important thing we want to take care of? Probably protection. Because if something happens to one or both of the parents, are there assets there to take care of the other parent and the children? So we'll start with protection, and we'll consider different options that can grow with the parents as the parents' income grows. And we'll also then look at, okay, do they have enough money in their emergency account? Do we have to start a savings plan so that they have their emergency account? So protection planning and emergency account. Then the next step would be retirement savings, especially if they have a 401k at work and they're getting a match. We don't want them to pass up the free money. So if they're getting a 3% match, we want to make sure they're at least saving that 3%. So we start with those basic things to get them out with a plan to move forward. And then every year we meet and say, okay, where do we stand? What happened? Maybe the parents got a 3% raise, so we bumped up the 3% contribution to 401k to 4%. Maybe we're just saving a little bit more so that in 2 years we know we can upgrade their protection planning.
What can I read between the lines on protection planning, or is that what I would think of as like life insurance, whole term, long-term care? I mean, like, is that what you're?
It's life insurance, it's health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, home and auto insurance.
Okay, so it's all of those things.
It's all of those things are, yep. So we pick the hot buttons and try and get to those things first. And like I said, we always do things that are moldable, changeable, because especially if they have a little, so let's say their kid is 6 and we don't know how far that kid's going to develop. So we don't want to put anything in place that can only be used for that child's benefit. We like to put things as much as possible in place that could be used for that child's benefit or for the parents' retirement planning. So we'd like to do things as multi-purpose as possible.
Yeah. And so you mentioned kind of this planning and protection and involvement of them as a client, but in terms of any barriers to becoming your client, I imagine, just like I like clients who are motivated and ready to take action, that makes the whole process a little less painful, so to speak. What other tells or things that are, okay, this is a great fit for me? I mean, I presume some of it's personality, but how would somebody interview you or get to know you and see if you guys are a good fit to work together?
Well, from my standpoint, I want to make sure my clients are ready for this, because as we talked about in the beginning, it's a emotional journey to think about these things. And are they committed to getting it done? And I don't mean it needs to be done in 3 weeks. It could take us 9 months to get through the process. So I'm not putting a time restraint on them, just a participation rate. I want to make sure that this is what they really want to be doing. They want to get started. For them interviewing me, it's just making sure that I explain the process and everything that we're going to be covering, so that they have a good understanding and feel comfortable working with me, because we're going to talk about things that they probably don't normally talk to a stranger about. So
I
I want to
only
make
laugh because
you're doing the
I hear
same
that
thing.
quite frequently too. Yes. Why are we talking about these depressing things? Well,
Yes, or my personal business, or
yeah,
all these things, or I have a fight with my brother. Who cares? Well, that you wanted to make him the trustee, that's probably a bad thing. All
yeah.
of these things. We learn family dynamics. Besides the money, the health, we learn family dynamics too. So
Okay.
just want
So
to make
even if
sure
I
that
don't,
we're comfortable.
yeah. So even if I don't have, $1,000 of income, I'm ready to start setting aside, or a month, that kind of thing. It's still an appropriate time to get started as soon as you're ready to make some commitment to looking at these things and detailing it out. That's
Correct.
very fair. And what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me is probably email or my office line. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you typically within 24 hours, and we can schedule a time to meet. I really like the first meeting to be in person, just because we're meeting as strangers and make sure we're a good fit. We can do some things Zoom as we progress. There will be a final presentation meeting that needs to be done in person. But contact me, we'll figure it out. Just also be aware that I make appointments 2 to 3 weeks out. So if you call me today, odds are you're not going to get an appointment tomorrow.
Also, I hear you have some very fun travel coming up. So
Yes, I will be gone. So poof.
awesome. Well, I've learned a lot. Sorry for the nosy questions and interrupting you, but I think you shared a lot of great information, and I know it's important for everybody to kind of take a look at the broader scope of that life care plan. So thank you for your time today.
No, I
I don't
appreciate it.
see
Thank
any,
you.
yeah, I don't see any questions popping up. So with that, I will, as I said, go ahead and follow up with everybody after this webinar. But if you're watching a recording, please feel free to reach out to us, and I will share at the end of this video some of our contact information. So thank you again, Karen, and thank you everybody for joining us. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Take care.